Hi guys, it is April from Getting Hugo with It. Today I'm here to recommend you books. You asked specific book requests and I answer. I will answer in a hot second. So let's get into it. So yeah, over on Instagram and on YouTube, I asked you guys if you are in the mood for anything in particular, what you would like to be reading right now, and tons of you answered. So many that this is part 2. I did a whole other part where I answered a bunch of book requests and gave recommendations. So we're going in for more. Get yourself a cup of tea. And let's begin. So, someone wrote in asking for a dual or multiple perspective, fast-paced story. So I have 2 book recommendations for you. This is so fast-paced. And it's The Kitchen House by Kathleen Grissom. I really need to get a new version of this. Look how tattered this is. Anyway, this takes place in the 19th century on a tobacco plantation in Virginia. And we follow 2 characters. We follow Belle, who is the illegitimate daughter of the slave owner and a slave. So we follow her story, and then we also follow Lavinia, who is an Irish immigrant, and her whole family on the way pretty much dies on the way over, and this slave owner decides to take her in. She lives with the slaves, but this, I'm telling you, was so fast-paced. It was unbelievable. Like, one huge thing would happen and you'd be like, wow, that was the big thing in this story, and you know, we're gonna have to wait a few chapters before anything else happens. But no, it was like boom, 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 boom. So fast paced. So yes, this, I could just like leave you with this, but maybe you've already read it. So I also have The Secret Keeper for you. So Kate Morton always does a dual perspective in her books. So in this book, we follow someone in modern day, Laurel, and she and her sisters have come to celebrate her mom's 90th birthday. And her mom has a secret that she has not revealed. And Laurel is kind of witness to this secret. She saw, when she was a teen, her mom have this violent interaction with a man during like a family picnic or party, and they've never talked about it, and she'd like to find out what that's all about. And we also read from Dorothy, this elderly mother's perspective, and about her history. This takes place in part during World War II, and there's bits in here about the Blitz that I just thought were fantastic, and it felt like I was there. So yeah, I hope that those work for you. Okay, so next up, someone wrote in and said moody horror, and that's all they said. And I was like, what is moody horror? And I thought about it a lot, and I kind of thought they were thinking I want something literary, like literary horror. And then I asked Barry what he thought, and he was like, well, I think that they want something kind of like playing on the horror genre, like I Know What You Did Last Summer vibes. So I'm going to give you both options because I have no idea what you need. So I would recommend to you My Best Friend's Exorcism for Barry's variety, which is like the campy, a campy kind of horror story. So My Best Friend's Exorcism takes place in the late 80s, early 90s, and it's about these 2 girls who are best friends. They're teens, and one day they're out at like a cottage, and one of them goes into the woods in the night and just kind of vanishes overnight. They're all worried about her. She comes back out and she's very much a changed girl. And her best friend thinks, oh my gosh, she's possessed and I need to help her out. It's quite funny. It's also quite gruesome. Anyway, I really enjoyed that. But if you were asking for something literary, I would recommend The Grip of It. This is a literary horror about a couple who move into a house, and the house it's haunted, but it starts to have like gross, like yellow stains suddenly appear on the walls. And really, I think it symbolizes their relationship crumbling. But in this house, in this haunted house, it takes form. So I really enjoyed that one. That one I think has kind of mixed reviews. A lot of literary horror doesn't work for a lot of people because they go in being like, I want a haunted house story, and then they get this other thing. So they're like, that's not what I meant. In any case, hopefully that helped you out. Okay, next is nonfiction. She wants something scary, true crime / mystery. So I've got 2 suggestions. One of them is I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. This is truly scary. Truly, truly scary. This is not the type of thing to read. If you live alone and you read this, I mean, my hats go off to you, because this is the true story of a terrifying murderer who was the Golden State Killer. And he was also a rapist, so he did so many rapes. He would break into people's homes and rape them in their beds. Sometimes he would kill them, and he moved on from like breaking into single women's homes to breaking into couples' homes, and he would sometimes kill both of them. Sometimes he'd let them go, and it's just terrifying. In any case, I think a week after I read this, they found the Golden State Killer. It was crazy. I loved this book, and I thought it was terrifying, but also very respectful of the victim. So there's that. A book that I haven't read that I want to read, like for this prompt, I want to read it, is American Predator, The Hunt for the Most Meticulous Serial Killer of the 21st Century. And this is about a man who would fly to different parts of the U.S. and leave these kill kits. He'd leave these bags. He'd dig up a spot of ground and leave these kill kits, go back home to wherever in the world he lived, and then visit these places and kill people. Just so screwed up. But apparently it's very, very good. And it's got a lot of like, if you liked I'll Be Gone in the Dark, read this. So I'm desperate to read it. Oh, another book. Sorry, just one quick other book that would be good for this is The Five. This is not terrifying. It is true crime, but it is about Jack the Ripper's victims. They leave Jack the Ripper out of it, but this author realized that, how many years have gone by since, and we've all thought, or many people, at least I have thought, that Jack the Ripper's victims were all prostitutes. They weren't. I think one of them might have been. The rest were poor women, and it dives into each of their lives. Fascinating, very sad, actually. That was a very sad one, but just in case you're interested. Oh, a pulse-pounding, bingeable thriller, and she loved Pretty Girls. I did too. It was so good. Also very violent. So I have one very violent book that I would recommend for you, and it's Blood Wedding by Pierre Lemaitre. This is about a nanny whose the child that she takes care of, she finds has been killed brutally, and she's having a hard time with her memory, and she thinks she might have done it, so she goes on the run. It is so twisty-turny. I really, really loved this. It's also very violent because he writes violent stories. Like, I also read Alex by him. That's also incredibly violent. And all of his works, like, you cannot put these down. So I would recommend that one to you. This is my favorite of the ones that I read by him, which is like 2, but I have more on my shelves. Anyway, then the most twisty-turny, fast-paced thriller that I've ever read so far is Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney. This follows a woman who is in a coma, and we follow her before the coma, like a week before the coma. In the coma, she's absolutely terrified because she can hear everything around her. She can't communicate. And so her husband is there, her sister is there, and she's scared because she thinks one of them landed her in the coma to begin with. And then you get these childhood diary entries that become increasingly strange. And I really loved this book, and I could not put this book down. And it really did have the most twists and turns that I've ever read in any thriller thus far. There's always time for more. I'm very excited to read the next most twisty-turny thriller. Oh, this one's nice. Something gripping that'll move you to tears. And oh my goodness, this is it. The Book Thief by Marcus Zizek. This is a World War II historical fiction book about a little girl named Liesel who lives in Germany. A couple take her in because she's lost her family. And it is about her trying to have her own childhood during the war while a war is going on. And she often steals books, and she seeks comfort in books. She has her best friend is named, I think, Rudy, and it's about their relationship. This family decides to hide a Jewish man in their basement, and it's about her relationship with him. It is so heartwarming, and it is a big book, but I listened to this on audio, and I did not want to stop listening to it. I listened to it everywhere I could, like doing chores, lying in bed. Like, I listened to it constantly, and I was bawling my eyes out by the end of it. So good. So I hope you pick that up if you haven't already. Oh, and then someone asked for historical fiction she has been loving, As Bright as Heaven. I'm so glad that she is enjoying that because I really liked that one. So As Bright as Heaven is very emotional, and there's a lot at stake in it. There's a lot of gray as to whether someone has done the right thing or the wrong thing in a certain circumstance. I don't want to give anything away, but she knows what I'm talking about if she's already read As Bright as Heaven. So first up, that gray area, I would recommend The Light Between Oceans by M.L. Stedman. I was also going to recommend The Lost Orphan, but they have such similar storylines that I thought I'd just recommend one, but also The Lost Orphan. But The Light Between Oceans follows a couple who live in Australia on Janus Rock. He is a light keeper, and they have been struggling with infertility for years and have had multiple miscarriages. They've just recently had a miscarriage, and one day they see a boat has washed ashore with a dead man in it and a living baby. And they take the baby and keep the baby. And there's lots of repercussions for that decision in their life. And so good, so amazingly good. So I'd recommend that. I also thought you might want to give Guernsey a try, the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, specifically because of community. I found in As Bright as Heaven, the family and the willingness to help one another during a hard time was a central focus. And so the same thing kind of happens in Guernsey, which is also historical fiction, World War II though. And that one follows a group of friends during the occupation of Guernsey, this little island off the coast of England was occupied by the Germans. And it's about how they react to it, and they create this like fake group so that they can have an excuse to get together and say, what in the world is happening? And it is about one of their friends in particular in that group and loving on this friend. And so you meet this group, but you also meet a journalist, a writer who has decided to write about this group. And she has this correspondence between herself and the people who live in Guernsey and belong to this club society. It's very good, and I hope that you would enjoy one of them. Next is thrillers without far-fetched endings. I love that caveat because I am the same way. I don't like a thriller to have like super crazy things happen at the end where you're like, how did that even happen? So I have 2 suggestions for you. The first is The Good Daughter by Karen Slaughter. Now, Karen Slaughter is a violent writer, so I need to warn you about that. But this focuses on sisters, and when they were very young, their mother was brutally murdered before their eyes. And they've kind of moved on with their lives. One of them has left the area and the other one has stayed. And their father has also stayed, and he's a lawyer in the area. And it's one of those stories where the sister comes home. Someone comes home to this town that they've been trying to avoid and escape from all of their lives. And it's about their relationship. The reason that she has to come back is because another murder has happened in this town, and her family has gotten involved in it somehow. And it's very, very good. It's very much like family drama thriller. You really get very invested in the characters in this book. I'm sorry about the light, guys. The lighting is crazy out there. It like goes from sunny to dark, and anyway. But yeah, I felt like these were very real characters and a real story. There's no far-fetched weirdo endings. And then I've got a book that is marketed as a thriller, but it's not a thriller. I'm saying it. It's not a thriller, but it does have a mystery to it. It's The Perfect Nanny. And in this book, we meet a family whose children have been murdered. You find that out right from the get-go. The children have been murdered. It looks like the nanny did it. And it really is about class. I think in France, this is written from a French author and is translated into English. And it's about this nanny who is so poverty-stricken, taking care of these rich people's kids. And this happens all the time to people around the world. And it was really an insight into a huge issue, into class. And yes, there is this mystery to it, but it just felt very real. So that's why I'm suggesting it to you. There is nothing far-fetched about this. This feels like incredibly real. Okay, I'm going to stop talking about that. Next is detective-like books. So one detective, well, you know that I struggle with detective series generally. I have like tons of them on my shelves, but I'm always like, oh, will I like it, will I not? But I liked the first book in a detective series called Sworn to Silence. And this follows a detective. I think she's like the sheriff or something like that in this town. And she grew up as an Amish person. And there has been this brutal murder within the Amish community. And she goes to solve the murder. And it's a series. I read the second, didn't like the second, but I liked the first. So you might want to read that. Also, very, very violent. Like Karen Slaughter level of violent. Just a warning. And then, I mean, would we even be here together? And would I be myself if I didn't recommend the Frida Klein series by Nikki French? This is the first one in the book. Now, it's not a detective series, really, because it's following a psychotherapist named Frida Klein who gets involved in all sorts of cases. And she works with the police. So is it a detective series or not? It's debatable. Blue Monday follows her when she's sitting down with a client who has been struggling with infertility with his wife for years. And he keeps dreaming about this red-headed boy. And then a boy of a very similar description goes missing. And she feels like she has to go to the police about it. Which she does. She should do that. And you dive into the mystery. So good. Like last but not least is Whoa, it's getting so dark, guys. What in the world? I think it's gonna snow. It's meant to snow. Historical fiction, women-centered, post-World War II. Okay, I'm gonna start with a book that like is this exactly, but I haven't read it. It's The Women in the Castle. It follows a group of women just at the end and post World War II. Now their husbands have all died in the war. They were resistance fighters or something, and they were all killed. They were trying to assassinate Hitler, I think, and it didn't work. And we meet these women as they get together and try to work through their grief post World War II. I do imagine there will be flashbacks to World War II though, so I don't know. I haven't read it. So I have two other suggestions for you. Next is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This takes place in the 50s, and we follow Evelyn Hugo. She is a Hollywood actress trying to climb her way to the top, and she's not always the most likable character, but this is very female focused. I'm not going to give anything away because people can give stuff away talking about this book. And to me, it was like a big, oh my goodness, big shock, but like a good shock. So very female focused about her life, trying to make it in Hollywood. And then another very female focused historical fiction. It takes place in the 60s. So I started thinking that the 60s are more contemporary to me, but by definition, historical fiction. This is rambling. It's The Secret Life of Bees by Sue Monk Kidd. And this follows a little girl. I mean, she's not that little. She's, I think, 12 or 13. And her father's not very nice. Her mother has died. And she misses her mother. And she has this little box of her mother's trinkets that she goes through all the time. There's a woman in her life, a black woman in her life, who's kind of a stand-in mother for her. And her name is Rosaline, and Rosaline has gotten in trouble with some very racist men in this town that they live in South Carolina. They have to leave, so they run away to a place called Tiburon, and that has a specific link to her mother. This is very female focused. A group of female beekeeping sisters take them in. You will fall in love with the women in this book. And that's it. I'm done. Whew. I hope that you guys enjoyed this. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to do this again. Like more suggestions and that kind of thing, because maybe I'll put out another call in a couple of months or something if you guys do enjoy this kind of thing. I am getting much better in the description box below, adding things like my Goodreads page, my Instagram, my Amazon wish list is there, so you can go and check me out. I hope you are doing well. Like and subscribe. I love you all, and I will talk with you soon. Bye!